Hey, I just got done doing a Q&A session about my song Motherhood Looks Good on You to connect with the release of the full band version of the song. It's available on all the streaming channels now, so if you haven't checked it out yet, definitely go check it out. Also, while you're here, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel so you see whenever new videos come up. Hit the like button so that YouTube knows that this is good content and it's something that you might want to see in the future. And also, if you're interested, drop down, click on the link to join the email community. I send out tour announcements, I send out new music announcements, all those different types of things. The email list gets it all first, so go check that out too if you haven't yet. And now, let's jump on over to the Q&A. Well, after our first son was born, I was standing in the doorway of his nursery and looking at my wife and talking to her as she was nursing Quinn, right, as she was feeding him. And I remember at one point looking at her and thinking to myself, man, motherhood really does look good on her. And that was the birth of that song. That was kind of the earworm, the mental worm, whatever you want to call it, that stuck with me and got me to eventually write the song. You know, Lindsay, all she ever wanted was to be a mom, and that was kind of her big thing forever. And so when she finally became a mom and was just doing an amazing job with it, I just remember at one point looking at her and being like, "Yeah, okay, this is definitely her thing, and I can see why she wanted this so much, and it looks good on her, it works for her," and that was what inspired me to write the song. The moment that I found out that I was going to be a parent for the first time was a crazy moment for sure. I So we were living in Denver at the time, and we were hanging out in our apartment, and we were in the middle of this nutrition kind of challenge thing called Whole30, and I remember I was sitting there, and it was like a no drinking, no sugar, whatever, like all these restrictions, very restrictive diet for 30 days, and so both Lindsay and I were in kind of rough moods for a while because we had to kind of get used to this whole new eating pattern. And one day she came home and she's like, "Okay, so they got something for you that you're not gonna be able to drink. You're not gonna be able to have for a little while. But I saw it. It was a rare thing. It's something that isn't usually available. And so, but I saw it. And I thought I'd pick it up for you." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. What is it?" And she hands me a bag, and so I pull out this great bottle of whiskey. I love whiskey. I'm a big whiskey fan. And it's this bottle of whiskey. It was this Remus, if I remember correctly, and it was a bottle that apparently was only made in limited edition every year, and it was tough to find. And so she's like, "Yeah," she told me the whole story. And she goes, "There's something else in there too that you might want to take a look at." And I pull out the pregnancy test, and I was just like, you're just mind blown, right? And at the time, I was running a business, and I was running this CRM company that I still have, and but that was kind of my full bore thing, and I was working on building it, and things were tight, things were tough. It wasn't exactly like skyrocketing. I was in a super competitive industry. I was trying to crack the code and figure out how to bring in new clients and make the thing work. It was still pretty, relatively speaking, pretty new. And I remember thinking to myself, "Oh my God, this is amazing. This is crazy. We've been talking about this for like 6 months now, since we decided to kind of stop trying to not try, or stop trying to try not to get pregnant." And so we've been talking about it for a while. And then all of a sudden it was here, and I was like, "This is fantastic." And then it very quickly went into, "Oh my God, we got to pay for this." And it was like this whole like kind of thing where like, "Oh my God, like, well, how am I going to do this? This is going to be so expensive, and is the business going to take off?" And then of course, that led to, well, am I going to be a good enough father to do this? Is this going to be something that I can do? Is this going to be and it, of course, the all the questions, all the fears, all the concerns start spiraling and whatnot. And a lot of that ended up making its way into the song, right? And that second verse, that through all my fears, all those things that I never know, that all came came through in the song, and so that was a big part of it. That was the moments after finding out that I was about to become a parent, more so than the moment of finding out was what made it through the song, because throughout all of Lindsay's pregnancy, she was pretty rock steady, right? She didn't seem like she was nervous about things. I mean, she was definitely nervous about giving birth. Obviously, I mean, it's a big traumatic thing, and I knew that she was nervous about that, rightly so. But she didn't seem nervous about raising a kid. But I was, and so that second verse was definitely inspired by that moment that I found out that I was going to be a parent, and all the thoughts that came afterwards. How did I approach writing a song that was so personal and intimate? That's a good question, because, you know, I sat with it for a long time. And but I wrote it for her first Mother's Day. And Quinn was born in March 9th of that year, 2020. And our first Mother's Day was, what, middle of May, something like that, I think it was, when Mother's Day fell that year. And so, I only had a couple months, but between the time that I kind of realized that I had that kind of idea that nagged at me until I had to write it out, and the time that I wrote it, I didn't have a whole lot of time. But at the same time, I had enough time to sit with it compared to how I write today. Now, keep in mind that when I wrote this song, I was not writing music again, right? I mean, I was at a point in my life where I hadn't written anything, like really written anything, in a good 12 years, something like that, 11, 12 years. And so it had been a long time since I had written anything and done anything more than just the stuff that I had written bunch of years ago, and the stuff that I was all the cover music that I was playing. And so it had been a while. So I sat with it. I kind of fought with it for a little bit, and then I did what any business owner would do, and I went to the whiteboard, and I was sitting in my office at the time, and I'm like, and I had the song in my head. I'm like, this idea in my head. I'm like, I got to figure this out. I mean, the one thing that I had was this: you've always been a beauty, but I know this one thing's true: motherhood sure looks good on you. That's what I had. And I find a lot of times that as long as you have a good chorus, then the rest of it kind of can fall into place. You just got to figure out where those places are. So that's what I did. I spent a lot of time, and I looked at the whiteboard, and I created a little mind map, and I said, verse 1, this is what I want to convey. Verse 2, this is what I want to convey. Verse 3, this is what I want to convey. And I got to figure out how to connect it all together. And so that's what I sat down to do. And in verse 1, I said, okay, so I want to talk about this kind of like when I first found out that she was pregnant, when I first learned that she was going to have a baby, and we were going to be parents, that I was going to have a baby. In my arms afterwards, right? Not obviously, but when I've learned all these things, like I wanted to convey that feeling, and that when I first heard the news, I didn't know what to say, didn't know where we'd go, but I knew our lives would change. Had no idea what was going to happen, right? I had no idea where this was going to go, because we had when we moved into the apartment that we were living in, we had talked about the fact that, okay, we're going to live here and then have a kid, and then ultimately buy a place, right? Which is what we did, with a couple more steps in the middle of it. But I didn't know what that was going to mean, right? I mean, living in Denver, especially, living in Denver then, it was expensive, super expensive to try to buy anything. Denver was on the rise. And so so all those things just kind of like fell into place, and so that's how I approached it, right? It was, I wanted it to be very raw, wanted it to be very real, wanted it to be very me, and convey all the things, the true things that I was feeling at the time. And so I sat down and figured out just exactly what I wanted the story to be, and that's what I wrote, and just figured out a way to paint it in such a way that made it sound pretty, basically. how did Lindsay react the first time that she heard the song? Well, the first time that I played the song for her was on her first Mother's Day. So Lindsay had shared with me that she was afraid that COVID, because Quinn was born March 9th, 2020, which was 6 days before the world shut down. And Lindsay had shared with me that she was afraid that COVID was going to steal her first Mother's Day, just like COVID stole so many other things. And I made a pact with myself. I made a point that this was not going to happen. That was not going to be the case. She was going to get the Mother's Day that she deserved. And so, and then that's actually why I wrote the song. I wrote it all out, recorded it, and then I started putting together this kind of video montage, music video for it. And it was interesting because with only 2 months under our belt as parents, there wasn't a whole lot of video to work with. In fact, there was more video of me with Quinn that I had taken just from like by setting up a video camera than there was of her with Quinn or of us with Quinn or anything like that. And I know that in in a lot of families that's not uncommon that the dad ends up with tons of pictures, tons of videos because it's so natural for mom to take pictures and whatnot. And all that's very true. And and I worked very hard to make sure that I remember to take pictures and I remember to take videos. And I'm getting better at it as time goes by because I don't want her to have that kind of needing a proof of mom picture that all the time. Like I try to make a point to get stuff to get pictures and video of her, but we were still getting used to all this stuff back then, right? I mean, so again, it was only a couple months of time that I had. And so I had to cobble together some videos of myself playing with Quinn that kind of worked with the song. So it was like me performing the song or basically playing something that kind of looked like I might be playing this and that it was like my performance aspect of the video and then cut to pictures and videos and things like that of her. Fortunately, with Apple, with the iPhone that we had, I don't think Google had done this yet, or the Samsung or whatever had done this yet, but they had those live videos or those live photos that were like 7 seconds long, or 3 seconds long, whatever it was. And so you had like there were a bunch of live photos that I had taken and that she had taken of herself that I was able to turn into video and add that to it and whatnot. So I created this whole thing and created this whole video. And for her first Mother's Day, that was her gift, right? That was her gift from me. And so I sat her down on the couch and I said, okay, now press play. And I'm like, this is our gift to you. And so she's listened to it, started hearing it, and this video, by the way, is still on my YouTube channel. But she started listening to it, started playing it, and all of a sudden she started crying, and she looks at me and she goes, "Did you write this?" And I'm like, "Yep." And so and that was the first time that she saw it, and I made the goal to as any guy who's been in a relationship with a woman knows. Well, I guess anybody who's been in a relationship with a woman, man or woman, knows that the goal for a gift like that is our big old happy crocodile tears, right? And that was my goal for that were those crocodile tears, and I definitely got them, and I was very, very happy about that. When I first heard the news. So the creative process behind the songs, the music and the lyrics. I talked a little bit about the lyrics before. I literally whiteboarded it out. I had a whiteboard in the office that I had at the time, and I whiteboarded it out what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it, and then edited. I don't know who. I heard recently a quote from somebody that said that the first write is the rewrite, and for me this is very, very true. In a lot of situations. There's a lot of songs that I've done that I've written that still stand as the original write, but with little things cut out, maybe small things changed. But there are others like Motherhood that are real big changes and have those real big shifts. But then I had to go and sit down and figure out what I wanted the melody to be. And again, I had this melody of, and you've always been a beauty, but I know this one thing's true. Motherhood sure looks good on you. I had that, but I didn't have anything else. And I've always felt confident in my ability to write a chorus melody, but for a long time I struggled with my skill at writing verse melodies. And I feel like I've gotten a lot better over the course of my time writing songs, but for a long time I struggled with that, and I always thought that my verse melodies weren't good enough. And so I spent some time trying to figure out how I wanted this to sound. And I tried pulling from different artists and whatnot, because there's people out there that I kind of had the song. There are other artists that I kind of said, this guy would sing this, right? This is the kind of thing that this guy would sing. And so I would start trying to sing it like him, or sing it like these people, and nothing really fit. And but eventually I just kind of got really, really simple. And in a lot of my writing, simplicity is a friend of mine, right? And because I like things to be relatively easy, to relatively simple, right? So that I don't do the big chord busts. I don't do like a lot of the stuff. I don't do a lot of the kind of challenging lyrics, and sometimes I do, and I like doing that, right? But a lot of times I really focus on simplicity. And so when I finally said, "What's this melody gonna be?" That's when I just kind of said, "Well, I had this." And I just, that's all that I had. When I first heard the news, I didn't know what to say. And so I literally, with this one, a lot of times I'll try to kind of split melody and chord progression. So instead of going down like this, I'll go up like this. And so like find this, and that's a terrible example, but don't judge me. But it's like I'll find those things, and I'll find those little opportunities. But with this, I just, like I said, it's because it's such an intimate song, and it's such a close 1-to-1 song. I wanted it to just feel like it was me and her. And so to do that, that's how I ended up with this kind of like, when I first heard the news, I just followed the chord progression with a melody. I didn't know what to say, and just like literally walked along the line of the progression, and that's what I did. And so, and again, this is one of those songs in particular. I find that the more intimate a song is, the better you can do with a simplistic kind of progression to it, because it's it feels more raw. From what I find anyway, it feels more raw. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that would disagree, and that say, "Oh no, you got to do this, and the other thing, whatever." And that's fine, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of great talent out there, and there's a lot of great songs out there that do that. But I think in this one, I like the decision that I made to just kind of stick with a very simple melody, very simple chord progression, nothing too crazy. I think the stops and the motherhood sure looks good on you. I think those are the hardest parts. But as long as you have a good beat behind you, you can kind of follow along with it. Working with a drummer on this is an interesting thing, because working with a full band rather, because especially the drummer wants to count it out, right? And that's, I mean, obviously, because that's what they're doing. They're kind of figuring out what the parts are. And I've done a lot of work with a drummer on this recently, and and it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge, because playing it live, it's so easy to cut those "motherhood sure looks good on you" and make those different every time, so that it says you. and so like play it differently. But then when you're playing with a band, you got to kind of keep it all together. So that's been an interesting challenge. But outside of that, those. But again, it's mostly, for the most part, the creative process was keep it as simple as possible. Make sure that it conveys. Make sure that it lands, and let the song, let the lyrics do the job for you.
I didn't know what to say.
How does Motherhood Looks Good on You compare to other songs as far as emotional depth? It's an interesting question because everything that a lot of the stuff that I've written has been really emotionally driven, right? Everything from 2 a.m. from when I was at a point in my life when I needed to find something different, all the way through to Quinn's song when I was conveying my wish and my hope for my son. At the time, my only son. I've got a second one now, but at the time, my only son. Writing Quinn's song was the goal of it was just to convey what I wanted for him, right? And so a lot of it's been emotionally driven. Easy to Fall For was driven by past breakups and past relationships and whatnot, and so a lot of it has been focused on that. This one was the first one that I wrote about and for someone that I loved, who, for a specific thing in their life, right? So, like, for example, Nothing Wrong, I wrote as a kind of a breakup song, post-breakup song. Obviously, I was still very, very much in love with the girl about whom I wrote the song, but we weren't. We were gone. We were done. We had moved on from one another, and then gotten back together, and then moved on from one another, and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So there were things like that, right? But this was the first one that I wrote for someone that I was still like actively loving, right? That was my partner in life. That was kind of the love is a verb kind of a thing, and so it was definitely, it's a different kind of emotional depth, but I don't know that I would say excuse me, I don't know that I would say it's deeper necessarily. I'd say that it's just kind of it explores different aspects of it. It would explore different aspects of that emotion. So I think that's probably the best way that I can describe it.
I didn't know where we'd go.
So the choice of imagery in the song is actually pretty simple. It's like I mentioned before. My goal for it was really just to make sure that I conveyed everything that I was feeling about this whole process, from the time that I first found out that I was becoming a parent, all the way through to the time that going through the process of watching the belly get bigger and and watching watching that the life kind of take shape, and then eventually watching her actually nursing and giving life, and I mean literally from her body giving life to this little baby. That was the imagery, right? That's all that's the only thing that I wanted to convey. And I know that there's a lot of women out there that obviously that do this, and that do it in all ways, shapes, and forms, and it's amazing every single time. And so I hope that it's something that gets conveyed, that maybe if there are some guys out there that aren't great at conveying these types of things, that they're able to use this song as a way to kind of do it, because it shows that imagery of what it's like from the guy's perspective in a lot of ways. It shows parts of what it's like from the guy's perspective. There's a lot of other things that I didn't touch that focus more on kind of what it feels like to go through this on the dad part, but it focuses on the guy's perspective, watching a new mother kind of become a new mother, and the amazement that it all kind of plays
But
out.
I knew our lives would change. And
So, how do I hope that my child will understand the song when he's old enough to? Well, now I've got two, right? And so there's the two of them that are likely going to be hearing this song pretty regularly for the foreseeable future. Foreseeable future. Um, and I've already gotten to see it a little bit with Quinn, with the older of the two, because he's 4 now, and he's starting to kind of grasp a lot of these things. He's starting to understand some of these things, and so seeing the way that he's able to look at his mom and look and listen to the song and see, oh look, that was motherhood, and listen to the words "motherhood looks good on you," and kind of internalize that himself, and then convey that as well at certain points when they're, you know, interacting with one another, playing with one another, snuggling with one another, whatever. It's really cool. It's a really cool thing to see. I hope that it kind of deepens for him, and it grows in a similar way for Emerson as he grows up as well. I would love to see the way that develops for them, and like I said, I hope that it gets deeper and deeper as time goes by.
couldn't imagine this with anyone better.
How does this song convey my experiences and kind of perspectives on fatherhood? So the only aspect of fatherhood that I included in this song are the aspects that pertain directly to her, right? To mom, and to motherhood, right? Because of course it's in when you're dealing with a male female couple raising a baby, having a baby, I mean, the dad's gonna feel very differently than mom. And of course, I can only speak to my own experiences. I'm sure that in all couples, this is a very similar thing. That one parent is going to feel very differently than the other, especially if one of them, if for example, I have some amazing female friends who one of them carried the babies and the other was the support person, right? And it's amazing. It was fantastic, and I've known a few couples like that, which I think is fantastic, which I think is beautiful. But I can only speak to my experience. I can only speak to the experience of being a man and not understanding what's going on, right? And I found that there was a significant feeling of calm that my wife conveyed, and that may or may not have been 100% true. There may have been a lot more going on underneath the surface. In fact, I found out later that there was, but which is hence the line, through all my fears, all those things I'd never know. Your love saw me through, and your uncertainty never showed. Because I found out later, after Quinn was born, before I written the song, that she was terrified of all the same things that I was. She just wasn't showing it, and so which was a benefit to me because it let me kind of panic. But of course, wasn't necessarily fair to her because she didn't have the same capacity to do it, at least inside of our relationship. Fortunately, she had she had a great support system out with her, with our birthing center and a lot of other people that she knew. but yeah, I mean, it was definitely but so like I said, I mean, the only aspect of fatherhood that I wanted to bring into this was the aspects of it that made her look even better as a mom, right? That I was breaking down, she stood tall, right? And I was terrified, and she always just seemed to be in good shape, right? Um, and I can say, and I think it's important to make note of the fact that I can say that because I know that she was talking to other people about it, and she was processing all these things with people who she knew had been through it before, were going through the same thing, and kind of processing and understanding from the same perspective, right? I don't think it's a good thing for anybody to hold in all that stuff and not process it at all. So, because the mental health aspect of this is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly challenging. So it's important to have people to be a part of that. I have to make that point very, very, very clear. So if you don't have somebody and you're watching this, find somebody, please. But like I said, that's going back to the question about what aspects of fatherhood did I include. Really, it was only the parts that pertained and reflected back to her on the whole "motherhood looks good on you" concept. How has becoming a parent influenced my music and my expression and all that sort of stuff? That's interesting, because becoming a parent is what made me come back to this full time, right? It's what made me start writing again. It's what made me decide that I needed to find a way to pursue music again in a much more involved and much more focused way. So it had a big impact on it. As far as kind of long-term impact, long-term influence that it may have had, I'm sure that it did. I'm sure that it's changed a lot of my thoughts and the ways that I kind of approach the world, because it's changed the way that I approach everything. It's completely altered the way that I look at life, the way that I look at the world, the way that I look at the planet and at people and the whole nine yards. So that stands to reason that this was also a part of it. What I have noticed, though, with other things, and which I'm sure is the same as when it comes to this, is that it's kind of like cooking a frog, right? It's like you're the one being the frog. That if you turn the heat up slowly enough, you don't realize that the heat's going up, and then all of a sudden you're in a hot pan. The change happens gradually enough, and the shifts happen gradually enough that all of a sudden you realize, oh wait, I'm in a completely different place than I was before, and I never realized that I was doing anything differently. And so I was just focusing on having a good time. It just so happens that having a good time looks differently these days, right? It's not hanging out at a dive bar until 2:00 in the morning anymore, which I still love to do from time to time. Don't get me wrong, but it's not doing that sort of stuff now. It's hanging out on a Friday night, eating pizza and watching the 7-month-old baby steal pizza from the 4-year-old, right? I mean, which is hysterical, by the way, or steal pizza from me, which is less hysterical in the moment, but looking back on it, still pretty funny. But it hasn't really changed a ton about the songwriting, but about my process, anything like that. But it's probably changed quite a bit about the what I'm writing about and where I draw my inspiration.
And you've always been a beauty, but I know.
What was the most surprising aspect of parenthood that I've experienced, and did it influence a song? So, no, it didn't influence a song, right? Nothing. There was nothing about parenthood, my kind of realizations of parenthood, that really influenced a song, save for that last moment when where I kind of pulled that last tag in. I'm standing here staring at our baby and and I still can't imagine how this could all be true, right? That obviously was impacted just by the idea and the realization of parenthood. But I suppose the bridge too. When it says is that bridge is with all of the things that we still have yet to come. I'm thrilled just to know that we've just begun. Lives have just begun. Um, that's definitely, as I think about that, that's definitely obviously um, that's definitely been influenced by parenthood, and that specifically was a realization that I had that this is when I was kind of at the beginning of all of this. I remember I remember telling Lindsay at one point. I don't remember if we were still in the hospital or just leaving the hospital or what, but I remember telling her at one point, you know what I can't believe right now? Like, the weirdest thing about this whole thing is that we don't get to, like, just leave him and go somewhere, right? I mean, like, he's coming with us now when we leave this hospital, assuming we were still in the hospital when I said this, when we leave this hospital, and then everywhere else we go until we're comfortable having babysitters take care of him and whatnot, and I remember making that realization that this is literally, truly just the beginning, right? Like this kid is tied to us forever, and it was. I mean, it was such a weird realization to have, such a weird thing to think about, for a lot of reasons, right? Obviously, kind of a big part of it is like, well, yeah, of course, right? I mean, you just had a baby. You have to take him home with you, right? But I mean, there's a people always tell the joke that I can't believe that they're going to let us take this child home, right, with no supervision and just expect that we're going to be okay uh, as parents. That was very, very, very much the case for me, for both of us, really. Like, we're just like, man, this is like, people are going to actually trust us to raise this child, and I think fortunately we've done a pretty good job so far, but it's such a wild thing. Um, but I think that probably did influence the song. But outside of that, I'm not sure. The other realizations that I've had about becoming a parent was that it's more fun than I expected it to be. And I'm glad that I'm glad that I waited until I was older to have a kid. I was 39 when Quinn came. I often joke that I almost made it 40 years without changing a diaper, and then Quinn came along and ruined that. And inside of the first like 2 months, 3 months, I was changing diapers left, right, and center. Um, in fact, the only bit of unsolicited advice that I ever got that actually made sense to me was from one guy that had just had a baby, and he goes, "Listen, I'm not going to give you any unsolicited any advice because you haven't asked me for it." And I said, "Thank you so much because I hate unsolicited advice. It's a big thing for me." But he said one thing, but I'm going to tell you this, and he says, "Take it or leave it. Tell me to shut up if you want to. But whatever amount of diapers you think that you're going to need for the first 2 months, multiply it by 5, and you'll probably have about enough." And that was definitely that was very true. But yeah, I mean, it was just especially when you're a new parent and kind of in the early days, realizations are being thrown at you left, right, center, just over and over and over again. And so yeah, it's definitely they definitely hit for sure, but they're worth it. It's fun, and like I said, it's more fun than I expected it to be. And so you just, if you can find the fun, if you can focus on finding the ways that it's fun and funny and exciting, it becomes a lot easier to navigate and to kind of handle all these like mind blowing realizations that your life is nothing like what you thought it was before.
This one thing's true.
What advice would I give other artists on sharing stories from themselves? Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. Right? I mean, you hear all the time, write what you know, write what you know, write what you know. And it's become cliche, it's become trite. I get that, but it's so true, right? I mean, it's your life, your stories, the things that make you you are uniquely you, right? And you have a different way of expressing them than I do, right? I mean, I'm not the first person to tell his wife or a woman that motherhood looks good on them, right? That they look great as a mother, that they're glowing, that they're like look at you, you look amazing. This is so natural with it for you. Like you don't look like you don't look like you're stressed at all. Like all these things that have kind of these bittersweet connotations to them, right? I mean, I'm not the first person to say that for sure, right? I mean, I just said it this way, and so my experience, the way that I do it, the way that I talk about it, is so different than the way that you'll talk about it. If you're an artist watching this, and you think that there's another way to tell a woman that she looks great as a mother, that write it, right? Get it out there. Let's collaborate on it. Let's. I mean, there's so much that's yet to be said, because not everybody people don't communicate the same way, and even more importantly, people don't hear the same way. People don't listen the same way, right? I mean, motherhood looks good on you is a great line for somebody that thinks in a specific way, and probably even for a lot more people than that, right? But I mean, there's other ways to say it too that other people are going to hear better, and it's going to land more effectively with other people, and so utilize that, right? I mean, but it all comes down to your personal experience. Like, find that stuff that's inside of you, and leverage it. Like, you've lived these experiences, you've built these experiences, you've survived these experiences, maybe, who knows, but use them, right? I mean, the stories that you have are worth hearing, and they're worth sharing. And so, don't be shy about that. Don't be afraid to do it. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable with people, because that's where the good stuff comes from. There's a comedian named Mike Birbiglia that has a podcast called Working It Out. And I'm a big fan of Birbiglia, and so he's one of those guys that I just like everything that he does. I kind of try to track and see what's going on, and so when I found out they had this podcast, I started listening to it, and I don't remember if it was him that said this or one of his guests that said it, but as far as stand up comedy goes, right? Tell your secrets, because that's where the interesting stuff lies, right? That's where the stuff that connects you, then that draws people together, really, really comes from. And I think that same concept holds true in songwriting. Like, find your secrets, find the things that feel just a little bit uncomfortable sharing, right? That you feel a little bit uncomfortable sharing, right? I personally did not feel comfortable. Wasn't exactly ecstatic about sharing the fact that I was terrified to be a dad, even though I know that everybody feels the same way. Most guys that I know feel the exact same way. They're terrified to go through this whole process. But you don't want to talk about it a lot, but that's where the truth lies, right? That's where the connection lies. And if you've followed me for any period of time, you've probably heard me say that music is one of the, if not the strongest way to share your story. And your story and my story, like the way that us sharing our stories, is how we develop connection with one another, right? It's like, you don't care a lick about me just passing by, but if you find out that I'm going through hard times and you know exactly what those hard times are, and you're able to relate to something, then all of a sudden there's a connection, and we're working together, and we're going through life together. And it's those those connections are what develop these communities that we have, right? And that strengthen these communities that we have, because the stronger the connections, the stronger the communities. And the stronger the communities, the stronger we all are as a people. And so it's only going to do good things for you to share your story, for you to really just put it all out there and let us see all of you, because that's where the real stuff lies.
Motherhood sure looks good on you.
How do I manage the emotional impact of performing the song live? That's interesting. So a lot of times when I perform live, Lindsay's not there. There's always a time when at the beginning of a career when your significant other is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be at everything that you're doing, and then eventually you're just like, well, okay, it's you're playing the same songs again, right? And I've heard this, I've heard the stories, I've heard I know all this stuff, and I love you, I love these stories, I love these songs, but I don't need to hear you play them again. I've got other things to do because she's got her own life too, all that sort of stuff, right? Um, and it's important for her to have her own life and to not exist just inside of my songs, of course. Uh, so and all this to say that a lot of times that Lindsay's not at my shows, and so it doesn't. So I tell the stories, but I tell the story about the song and kind of how the song came about and whatnot, and it's important, it's impactful, and all that sort of stuff. But I don't need to. It doesn't need to be a hugely emotional thing on my end, because I'm not looking at her and singing to her. That said, there have been times as well that she has shown up to gigs. She's brought, and the first time specifically that she brought Quinn and Emerson to a show of mine, we were at Snow Republic. I was on the outside stage, on the side of the building there, and I saw her playing, and it was a great show, great crowd, and so I said, I'm gonna play this song, and I kind of threw it in there. In a place that I wasn't expecting to. That it was just kind of off the cuff. I hadn't planned it out to be a part of the show, and then I played the song, and she was sitting there, and I was looking at her, and at one point I got all choked up, and I was like, oh boy, there we go. And so it does still carry some emotional weight for me when I play it live, when she's around. Um, just like Quinn's song does when Quinn's around, right? I mean, if I'm looking at Quinn and he's hearing me play his song, and he kind of gives me this look, and kind of very similar to the way that Lindsay gives me the look when I start playing her song, I get a little choked up, and I have to kind of look away in order to finish the song. But it definitely hits. But I think that emotion is good. It's a part of it, right? I mean, it's kind of like I was just saying that that emotion is what makes these songs phenomenal, right? It's that emotion. And I'm talking about all of our songs, right? Not just mine. Um, and not trying to puff myself here and call myself phenomenal, but I think that the emotion to it is what makes these songs really, really, really just powerfully resonate. And so I don't try to stifle it. I don't, I'm not going to openly weep on stage, but I don't try to avoid that emotion. I try to figure out ways to kind of loop it in and make it a part of the overall show. So. But lastly, what do I want this song to how do I want this song to exist kind of in the musical canon, so to speak? I want it to be a song that is remembered for for being real, and for that you know a man can maybe, like I mentioned this before, that maybe a man who doesn't know how to convey his feelings incredibly well, or just isn't apt to, um, or isn't likely to do so verbally, because God knows there are plenty of guys out there that just don't like to do that don't convey that sort of stuff verbally, and that's okay. But hopefully, this song can be a voice for them, can give them a voice, can give them the words that they need to convey that, right? I mean, because I think that we've come. I feel like, from my side anyway, I feel like we've come a long way in appreciating moms and appreciating women for what they do. I certainly try to do so. I'm not great at it, and I know that there's plenty of places that I fall down. But I try very, very hard to focus on on making sure that all the women in my life understand that how much I appreciate them, and watching them raise children and things like that they're amazing in doing so. But I know, like I said, I know that I'm not phenomenal at it, and there's plenty of ways that I could definitely be better at doing so. And so, hopefully this song is a way that we can, just we as a species, I guess, I don't know, can convey those feelings that a lot of us have, and they do. And I hope that as far as the women are concerned who listen to this song, I hope that they feel seen, that the mothers who listen to this feel like they feel like somebody sees them for what they're doing, and is that they feel appreciated. um, and then as far as just my family specifically, I hope that it's a song that always reminds them of just how much I appreciate my wife, and I appreciate her as the mother of my children. Because there are plenty of ways that I appreciate Lindsay, and I appreciate her as a spouse, as a lover, as a friend, as everything, right? But specifically as a mother, this is something that, obviously, as I've mentioned before, is very, very important to her. It's something that she was really focused on, as a big goal for her in her life, and so I want everybody in my family who hears the song to understand just how much I appreciate that specific aspect of her. With that, here's Motherhood Looks Good on You. When I first heard the news, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know where we'd go, but I knew our lives would change. And I couldn't imagine this with anyone better than you. And you've always been a beauty, but I know this one thing's true: motherhood sure looks good on you. Through all of my fears, all those things I never know, your love saw me through. Your uncertainty never showed, and I still can't believe that I'm as lucky as this. And you've always been a beauty, but I know this one thing's true: motherhood sure looks good on you. All of the things that we still have yet to come, I'm thrilled just to know that we've just begun. Our lives have just begun. I'm standing here staring at our baby and you, and I still can't imagine how this could all be true. And you've always been the beauty, but I know this one thing's true. And you've always been the beauty, and I know this one thing's true: motherhood sure looks good on you. Well, I hope you all have a great day, evening, night, morning, whenever you're watching this. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers. Hey, if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Check it out. Give this video a like or, thumbs up or whatever you want to call it. Smash the like, I think they say. But definitely definitely give it a thumbs up. Definitely give it a subscribe, because that's what lets the YouTube algorithm know that this is good stuff and that you dig this.
When I first heard the news, I didn't know what to say.